Welcome to Keep 'em Healthy with Jamie, your go-to classroom for integrative kids' health and wellness. I'm Jamie, a biology professor, an integrative health coach, and most importantly, a mom who's been through it all. When the conventional medical system couldn't provide the answers my own child needed, I took my background in anatomy, physiology, and nutrition and went looking for a better way. Join me as I chat with experts and physicians to help you decode your child's biology and psychology from childhood through young adulthood. If you're ready to stop guessing and start understanding, you're in the right place. Let's keep them healthy together. Hey listeners, welcome back to the Keep 'em Healthy podcast. Listen, we all want what's best for our kids. That's why we're here in the Central Bucks School District, right? But like quote unquote best used to mean just good grades and the sports. Now we're navigating this digital world that quite frankly is rewiring our kids' brains. And this is new for us parents. So how do we raise kids who are tech savvy when number one, we're not, but also how do we keep them, like human? Today, we're going to look at the future of our school district and the science a little bit behind why digital citizenship is the most important skill your kid can learn before they graduate. And honestly, talking about tech wellness and our kids' brain is the water cooler talk for all of us moms right now in Central Bucks because there are new things happening. We have that one-to-one laptop initiative. We also have our kids having friends that are on Roblox and TikTok 24/7. And so navigating how we parent and how we respond to our kids during that time is tough. So that being said, I would like to welcome Kirstin McGowan, who was also on episode 79 talking about Wait Until 8th initiative. I want to welcome her back to the show because Kirstin is going to give us the big picture of what's kind of happening right now with Central Bucks School District. She's a parent of Central Bucks kids, but she's also just a huge advocate, and I'm so happy to have her. So Kirstin, let's chat. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jamie. So great to be here again.
So happy to have you. So what is the school district working on right now? Where are we at? Where are we at from when we last talked?
Yeah. So, I think even given all of the administrative challenges we've been kind of going through the past year, I'm really pleased with kind of the slow and steady progress that Central Bucks administrators are making. A couple things. Hopefully folks in the community have seen that we did a second Screenagers showing in the fall, this past fall, bringing both kids and parents in the community together to kind of see just a documentary on this kind of struggle that's real in all of our kind of homes and in our community around use of cell phones and personal devices and all of the things we have to navigate as a family around values, boundaries, addiction. So really excited that they've continued that. We're hoping to get some additional events going across the spring months here as we're kind of closing out the 25-26 school year. But one of the biggest things I'm really excited about, it's still early stages, but Dr. Zaleski, who is the assistant superintendent of lower schools here at Central Bucks, she's a huge advocate on this front and is really engaging both the kind of internal Central Bucks, community, but also the families. And she has established at the top of this school year a digital wellness committee. It is currently made up of just employees. So I know at least we've got one child psychologist, we've got some other administrators, folks that kind of are in the know of what's happening in the buildings and the policies. And they are meeting fairly regularly to talk about just some of the challenges and questions from parents, and has created at least a starting place and a forum for the school district to kind of understand what parents want and how they can start to make some small tweaks and changes as we are kind of all in the boat waiting to hear what's going to happen kind of at the state and the national level on this front. But I think that this is just a really great foot forward while we are trying to figure out what those kind of state legislation is going to look like, but just demonstrates an interest in wanting to engage on this topic. The other thing I will add is I had the great pleasure of being able to participate this past couple of months in the Central Bucks School District comprehensive planning process, which I knew nothing about coming into it. It is a state requirement. So every 3 years, school districts are required to basically kind of do the long-term planning. What are our big kind of meaty goals and expectations we're setting for ourselves as a district? There's obviously, they talk a lot about the bridge of what did we have the last 3 years? How do we bridge to what we want to do? And knowing there's going to be stuff in the horizon that we don't even know exists yet. And so they brought kind of a group of administrators, folks from the IU who kind of help run the process, teachers, guidance counselors, and then there were a handful of parents, so that are not actual employees of the district, to talk about kind of where we're going. And I was really excited to see in the tech and innovation section, and this is all going to be coming out in a lot more materials for the parents and for the district. Digital wellness and citizenship is one of the two big meaty goals coming out of tech and innovation. So a lot of work to do, but at least it is front and center. And then secondly, in the health and wellness kind of section, a focus on mental health and helping kids help self-navigate. And so I think that, along with on the academic side, a big effort around skill mastery, and really making sure and I think the combination of those three things coming together will help set up a ripe environment for our kids and us as Central Bucks, community members, to start to weave in, just the questions, the new boundaries, hopefully the new norm around tech use in kids. So slow moving. We're a really big district, and we're lacking a superintendent at the moment, although we've got great folks kind of plugging in, but still marching forward on a lot of these initiatives, which is great. So long answer, but a lot to share.
But the conversation is going, which is promising, that it's not pushed in a corner and like, we'll talk about this another time. It's in the forefront. So it's helpful in that way. But can you tell my listeners, you mentioned digital citizenship. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of give almost like a definition, or maybe what that looks like, or what you're striving for as a parent, just even yourself, for digital citizenship?
Oh, it's such a good question. And I think it means something a little bit different to everybody. And one of the things we're going to have to do as a school district is define what digital citizenship and digital wellness is. But it's the concept of, for us, like civics lessons growing up was around like, be an upstander, like help your neighbor, how do you, pay your taxes and do the things a community member does, and how to have face-to-face conversations. Those things are all so critically still important. But there's this whole other digital world, right, that our kids are engaging in through games, through positive things too. It's not all negative, talking and FaceTiming with grandma and grandpa in Florida, but it also brings a lot of mature and sometimes unsavory, avenues for kids to get involved in through online chats and social media and the like. And so the concept of digital citizenship and digital wellness, I'm going to kind of bucket them together, is what is age appropriate? What are the right places and the skills that kids need to be able to keep themselves safe, socially, emotionally, and physically, because it all kind of is bleeding together. And then how do we help prepare them? To me, it's a lot like learning how to drive. We don't just like hand over a car and say, have fun. There's rules and tests and skills and practice that's required, to be able to kind of unlock those privileges. And so I think what we're trying to establish, here in Central Bucks, but also nationally and internationally, is like, what is the right kind of, you hear it a lot in education, the scope and sequence of what is appropriate and how do we kind of teach kids and bring them along? Because unfortunately, like, we are learning now what giving full unfettered access does if you don't give kids the right boundaries and the right opportunities to engage, and say, I think I messed up. How do I do this? I said something on a text chain, or I'm talking to someone in a game and I don't know how to get out of it. Those used to be easier because you could hear the kids in the back seat talking about it on the way to school. Now it's happening, in dark corners of your house and you don't know. So I think it's about just shining a light on it, creating awareness, and the right skills and practice to go along with it.
Right. So it's almost like a scaffolding. It's like step one. Okay, your kid's in first and second grade. These are kind of the normal boundaries, because at this point, their brains, they can't manage knowing when to turn things off. And so they're going to give these temper tantrums and all these things when you have to take that device away. And so like prep for that and be encouraged that that's totally age appropriate. And this is them, we're teaching them that this is part of how to navigate. And so I do think that would be really helpful, because this is new for parenting's hard in itself, because every kid's different. The experiences that your kids are having are never going to be exactly the same that we had as kids, because technology has changed, all these things have changed. So then we are like in this trial and error stage of parenting when it comes to these devices. And sometimes it's hard to understand what signs and symptoms maybe are happening that is related to the tech thing, or is it related to developmental and the kids are just going through a phase. It's really hard to navigate. So I'm going to ask you like mom to mom, digital citizenship in your home. What would be your three main scaffolding pillars or something that you would have in your own home?
Such a good question. I think first and foremost, it is about understanding what your family values are and what you care about. In terms of safety, in terms of communication, my husband and I have kind of probably gone a little far to one guardrail compared to what the norm is, although I think this is going to become more of the norm. But we first and foremost just talk about our family values. And then we built a tech and media agreement with our kids. And so it was just like very clearly out of the gate, like, what do we believe? What do we care about? And how are we going to manage these things, whether it's an iPad, access to mom and dad's computer, or cell phones in the future. I have fourth and sixth graders. The conversation on cell phones is getting more and more heated as I've got a emerging middle schooler. But, I think the biggest thing is I'm going to bounce between what we're doing and what I hear from friends in the community. I think one of the big challenges folks make is they give the phones, and it is oftentimes a gift, right? Especially coming out of the holidays. And the kid says, it's mine. Like, this is given to me. It is mine. And I think until you start to run into some of the challenges with the mentality of that as a minor with a fully loaded computer in their hand at all times, I think parents have a struggle to kind of unwind it. So if you can, set the boundaries up front. But in our house, it is, you don't own it. I paid for it. I own it. I own the passwords for it. I have access to it. It is a privilege, not a right, to be able to use it. And I think that has been really helpful in you can't see what I'm doing on here, or taking it into bedrooms and those kinds of things. And so I think first establishing just who owns it, because the other piece of this that I'm hoping we'll have more dialogue around as a community and a country is parents, like, if you have purchased it and you have a minor, what happens on that device? You could be responsible or held responsible for what your kid is doing, saying on there. So I think we start to also get into, this could get tricky. It's like buying the beer for your kids in middle school or high school. Who's responsible? The kid didn't buy it. The parent did. The other piece is that, we always talk about what's happening. And so just last night, my fourth grader has got this really awesome group of young women from camp. She does a sleepaway camp in the summer, and I do allow them to be on a chat. Very limited access to it, but they also know mom and dad get to read it. I'm always looking for, how do we teach and find the skill opportunity? And so I'm looking at this chat, and I recognized there was a new number on it. It didn't have a name attached. It was just an area code and something I didn't recognize. And these kids are from all over the country. And so I paused, I put it down, and we had a conversation around, how do you know who this is? When did they join the chat? Are you confident this is somebody that you know? And hey, let's respond and ask who it is. Make sure we have the proper spelling of their name. Is this mom's cell phone number? Is this a kid's cell phone number? And why it's tricky to have a number we don't know in here that could be doing who knows what and being a voyeur of what kids are doing, et cetera. Very unlikely, because these are kids found each other, but possible. So I think, one, setting the boundaries of expectations around usage, finding and engaging and letting your kids know, like, we will have ongoing conversations about what you're getting into. And it's not punitive. It is learning how to navigate this stuff. And then I think the third is, and this one's hard, and I think we've even talked about this the last time, but setting and being a good example for your kids on their tech use. Just like so many other things, parents, usage has a direct impact on the likely and expected use of their kids. And if you are at family dinner, sitting there firing off emails to work, that's what your kids see you valuing over family time. And this is not like an indictment on working parents. Like, I get it. I have been there. I have done it. But I think it's just like checking our own usage and being mindful about when and how we're using it. And it's not easy. We've kicked our phones out of our bedrooms. They sneak in sometimes, and we're trying, as adults, we're trying to navigate that. But I think those are the three things: clear and present boundaries, constant communication so that it doesn't become, I don't want to talk about it, and being mindful of what we're showing our kids.
I completely agree with all those three things. The other thing is when you're talking about using it as learning opportunities, I think that's really important, because what our kids are navigating. For example, I heard a story of like when the phone first came, people would say like, you can't talk and like have emotional connections all over the phone, blah, blah, blah. And what happened over time was that humans developed changes in their inflections in their voice and their pauses and different things to display that emotion and to connect with people so that you can have long distance phone calls and feel like you are in full conversations with these people. And so now, as parents, we're like, these kids don't call, these kids don't even like hang out. They're communicating through their video game system, they're communicating through emojis and text and pictures. And how are these guys how are they gonna have a real life connection with each other? And I think that having conversations being like, we want to just say get rid of it all because it's ruining their humanhood, right? But the other side of it is we have to have a little hope and faith in our humanity of that. We learn because we want to connect. Our programming is to be able to connect with others. And so, having these conversations with your kid is a connection with them. It's helping them create an established relationship with you as like, okay, this is a safe space to, I don't know what's going on here. Can you help me, mom? And the other side of it is that we have to teach them like to be able to read those messages and say, is this something where I need to show empathy to a friend? Is this something like, and having to navigate that? Because that's really hard when you can't hear their inflection, you can't hear their voices, and how to read that and understand the energy behind things and all of that. That's really hard to navigate. I feel like I'm even navigating that myself. So for you and talking about like empathy and being human in your relationships online, like what does that mean to you?
Oh, it's so good. I mean, we as adults step in it all the time. You misinterpret a text and you fire off something snarky back, and then it then it turns into something, or they get quiet. I think for at least what I'm trying to do with my kids is like, not one, feel like you always have to immediately respond. And so my kids don't have access whenever they want it. And so it forces some separation. Like they come into checking what somebody has been talking about, and they're late to the party because like it's been going on for a while, but it gives them a chance to kind of reflect on the dialogue and what's happening and know that they're responsible for immediately responding to everybody and what's happening on text. So you can have a chance to take a beat and think about it, but also to get curious. With, a sixth grade daughter, you start to have friends that are, unfortunately, like having a lot of questions around body image and maturing. And, sometimes we all do it. We kind of like say something and we're looking for, like, oh, no, you look so great in that. And just like reassurance. And it's so sad it happens so young. But oftentimes, I'm using those as an opportunity and asking my kids, get curious. Are you feeling, instead of saying, oh, you look great, like, and just answering it, try to understand what your friend might be asking you. And if you were sitting there live, what would you do? And in some of those moments, my daughter would say, I would be like, are you feeling okay? Like, are you feeling bummy? And just because they're recognizing that someone's looking for some an external validation. And so for me, I think it's a little bit more nuanced and tricky as parents. It's the same conversation that, we were having with our parents, 20 years ago, the channel has changed. And so I think it's helping kids recognize, to your point, and, Jamie, there's a different kind of cadence and language that's text worthy versus what you're saying when you're sitting across from someone with a cup of coffee or hot chocolate, and being able to navigate those different channels and know that it's different. And you can still have meaningful connection and relationships with people via text, but how do we bridge that in other places? And so, finding ways to, and we've just started this conversation, but, how do you create different ways to engage with your friends? And so, one of the things we've been talking about, my younger daughter is on this group text chain with her friends. They don't live around here. One's in California, one's in Florida, one's in Nashville. So we're not going to like be able to get them together. But I said, hey, why don't you guys set up a time to do a video call where you guys can actually like see each other? And so it's not just the firing off the little things. My older daughter, it's like, hey, we're having a bunch of her, swim team friends over this Friday night. We've had the conversation. Some of them are already in middle school. And so I've said, hey, by the way, I'll just remind everyone, the phones stay up in the kitchen. If they need to call a parent, they can come access it. But when you guys are in the basement, you guys are together, right? Like you're being kids. No one's videoing. No one's doing any of those things. And so just trying to kind of change the venue a little bit so that it's not always just through the chat function. Because, I'm going a little bit off topic here, but, I think a lot of the science, especially, and we haven't even touched on this and we don't have to today, but just AI is a whole nother can of worms in our kids. Mm-hmm. But, the most important skill our kids can learn and gain according to neuroscientists and college professors and future, employers, is sustained focus. And that requires not an addictive tool. It requires you to be able to engage and to have thought process and conversation. And so I think finding ways to do that, to balance some of the other stuff, is important. It's also why I think it's so important that we're teaching kids about tech and right usage, but not all education happening on tech. There's a balance.
Absolutely. I mean, there's balance in everything. And if I can pull back like a little bit from beginning when you were talking about how it's just different venues of how people are communicating, but it's the same conversation about, I'm even telling myself to take a pause before you respond to people. What is actually being said, even with, and like, what is emotions actually coming through from that other person when they're saying like, oh, I just feel like this dress looks like so weird on me, and, things like that. And to not just respond immediately, but to actually see beyond just the question, to go to the emotion, go to like, what's their body posture? What have you been talking about in general? Like all of that. So I like that across the board. And I do think that even though the venue changes, you can have a significant relationship with and conversation with a person on a different device completely. But I do think for the parents, the way that we text our friends is much different than the way the kids do. So I feel sometimes a disconnect when I'm like, here's how you should respond. Or I think my child's responding maybe not as appropriate when my response was weird to them. They'd be like, Mom, they'll think I'm weird if I say that. But I'm like, but that's actually the proper etiquette. Like, what are you talking about? So I wanted to circle back on that. And then the other thing is as a parent, we have a lot of boundaries and rules for tech in my house as well. And you do have to find different means to integrate and have your kids socialize. Yep. So I do feel like I try to find different avenues and maybe almost overexert myself because I'm like, I keep them at a certain boundary level. So for instance, finding ways for our kids to engage other kids in like a safe, healthy environment. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention was that in my house, and I'm sure this is yours too, we're not allowed to watch shorts, like quote unquote, like YouTube shorts, things like that. If you're going to watch a show, it has to have a beginning, middle, and end. It needs to be a sustained focus of a storyline, which is becoming more and more difficult because things are quick and fast and all of that. But that's something as parents we need to keep in mind, that let's just say you need a break and you want your kids to have some TV time. That's fine. Try to find things that is like a movie. It's a beginning, end, middle, has a full storyline where they have to sustain focus to understand what is going on. That is better than quick YouTube shorts of 10 seconds next, 10 seconds next, and that matters for that attention span. So there is ways to mitigate and balance using techniques. But again, who's thinking of these things when we're in the day-to-day of life, right? So this is why we're trying to talk about it. We're trying to do the best that we can. Yep. And then you add in AI, which like that's a homework conversation. Like, I can't figure this out. Can I just go on AI? They'll tell me how to do it. I'm like, yeah, they can. But like, no, like you're supposed to figure it out. Use your brain. Like your brain is the most powerful AI. Yep. Let's tap in. Let's see what's going on. And they're like, but everyone else just uses AI and it's so much easier for them. I'm like, I know. And I'm like, in one day you're gonna be an adult and you can do whatever you want. I said, but unfortunately, I'm your mom.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you make so many great points. And yes, like, does it take a little bit more brain power that, and executive functioning for us as parents to kind of think about ways in which to make sure our kids are not just, completely zoning out all the time on tech? Yes. But I think at least I have found that when I just set a really clear boundary, I'm amazed at what they can come up with. I think we also forget because our kids are maturing so quickly and they're, the influence of marketing is so heavy on them at an early age. And it's not just the Barbies anymore. It's like all the Sephora stuff. We forget they're still little kids. And then the baking, like the other thing that my kids and I have to just like close my eyes and know that like there will be flour everywhere when you're
surrender.
And I just like, my little mantra is like, would I rather this mess or the tech mess that I will have to inevitably probably be paying through the nose for in therapy if I continue to let that one run?
Absolutely.
And so like, that's the little like brain thing that I do. But I know we're probably not going to touch on it a ton today, but I mean, that is why there's such value in things like the Wait Until Eighth movement and some of the others that are out there that help communities engage and find each other that have like-minded intentions to try and not no tech, not never tech, but like age appropriate and in balance so that you can have a community of other families that are willing to say, no, go freeze your butts off, go play in the snow, figure it out, build a fort. It's important.
Absolutely. I do the it's almost like reverse psychology. I'd be like, all right, here are your options. It's like you can go outside and play, or you can. I have a list of chores on this piece of paper, and how the so quickly does everyone go flying out the door? It's like, okay, we're gonna go outside now. Bye.
I got some toilets upstairs,
Yeah. I'm like, so many things to be done inside here. If you want to stay inside, it's fine. And they're like,
Totally.
nope, I'm good. I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, bye. But that is the truth of it. And, I think that community is a big aspect. And to be able to say to a friend, listen, and this is like a real conversation. I know it's going to sound weird, but being like, hey, I'm having like 2 hours of tech free time on this snow day. I'm going to send my kids to the basin to sled. Like, would your kids join mine? Like, do they want to play? Because those other kids could be thinking, well, we're playing video games against each other, so why would I go outside in the snow to play when I know that they're inside playing video games, right? So
yeah,
it's those type of conversations even too, to be like, hey, just letting you know, having 2 hours of tech free time, my kids will be outside, send yours out if they're available, like things like that. And to have that community, and that encourages that type of play and imagination and connection again.
totally.
So, and don't be afraid to be that parent that is the one initiating this thing. Again, it takes a little extra effort, but what mess are you trying to clean up again, right? Like, either way, kids come with messes. We're going to be cleaning something up. So, pick your poison, right? Well, I like that advice.
100% agree.
So, Kirstin, we talked about digital wellness and citizenship. We talked about what CB's doing, and everything's in early stages. But we as parents appreciate any energy and conversation being put towards the health and benefit of our kids' brains and our kids' development and our kids' socialization. So, thank you for all those things. But if this was a mom that is listening and she has a 7-year-old getting ready to start Central Bucks School District, what is the good news about what's going on right now?
I think the good news is that we have so much more information than we had 5 years ago, even 2 years ago. And so I think we've got a lot of community members, folks in education, and legislatively that are focused on kids and their wellness and their safety. And so I think we're going to see things change. And I think the even best part is we can make the change. My mom always says, she's like, you make the decision and then you make the decision right? If you messed it up. And I think that this is one of those moments, just kind of played out a little bit in slow motion, is even if you've given your kid the device, like, you can change how you approach that with new information. And it's funny, as we're recording this, on the docket today here in the state of Pennsylvania, the state Senate is supposed to be voting on SB 1014, which is the bell-to-bell rule to kind of making sure that personal devices are not accessible from the start of school to the end of school. And so I think that wasn't even like it was a pipe dream this time last year. And so I think, change can happen. And so be patient with yourself, be open-minded. And, I think as long as we're focusing on the kids, I think they're going to be okay.
I do. And I think that also, if I could add into the parent that's listening, finding community support and talking with other parents about it is way more common than it was 5 to 10 years ago when my oldest were starting school. So there's so much more education. There's so much more conversation about it. So you don't have to be so alone in it, and you can learn as you navigate through the conversations. It's not like you don't have to be so one-sided or be afraid to say things. Be curious, talk, understand, and develop as you go. Make decisions, fix the decisions, or keep the decisions, whatever that may be.
Yep.
So great advice. So Kirstin, tell me a little bit about, so you do the wait until 8th, but tell me about what else you are doing right now.
Yeah. So Wait Until 8th is here in Central Bucks. And so check us out. It is a great way to get connected to people within your specific elementary school or middle school. But I've also spent the better part of the past year working with an incredible group of parents through PA Unplugged. It is a coalition of parents, educators, medical professionals, and others across the entire state. And we've got, I think, 3,500, partners now. And we are working to both create opportunities to engage, school districts and communities around the topic of tech and kids, and how do we kind of slow and turn the curb a little bit, or curb the escalation of tech use. But we've also spent a lot of time advocating for state legislation. Because if we look at the stats, teachers are tired of policing phones in schools. Teachers see the lack of ability to focus and pay attention because yes, watching March Madness on your phone in math class is way more fun than doing geometry.
Definitely.
And so the largest PSEA, which represents a large percentage of the teachers across the state, is in super support of this. And so I think it is a lot about how do we just create some really good high level guardrails around keeping the academic environment sacred, because it's not just about math class. It is about the social interactions, the engaging with teachers. It's about making plans for the weekend. And so taking the phone and the personal devices away. They still have their laptops, but it keeps the school environment, one, focused on both of the kind of holistic health and education. And so that's a big place I've been spending time. But anyone who is listening that is in the Penridge area, Penridge is hosting a community conversation on phones, focus, and the future on February 19th. So there's a lot more stuff popping up around the broader Philadelphia community. And then one last plug I will give, we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but Jonathan Haidt partnered with Catherine Price, and they just came out with the Amazing Generation. So it's the kind of illustrated version, kids version of the main message. And I will have no shame. I bribed my kids to read it. I told them I would pay them and then we could have a family conversation about it because I knew they're gonna be like, oh, mom. What I love about the book is that it focuses on don't be tricked by these social media companies and these tech companies. And so I think it is empowering for kids. And for anyone who is kind of struggling to figure out how to engage their kids, I think this is a really great tool and an avenue to kind of be able to start that conversation, because it's empowering for kids of don't be duped, use your brain. So I would strongly encourage picking it up.
I love that. That's on my list of books to read. But I think when we talk about conversations with kids and communicating and the language and the ways for kids to absorb information through pictures, like books like this with pictures and words that they understand about being duped or someone tricking you versus them talking about bigger terms of marketing and socialization and SEO. They're like, okay, whatever you're saying. I don't even know what that means. However, it is important and it does sink in, especially when you have the right language and the right way to show them that they can interpret it and make it known to them that they actually care. They care about no kid wants to be duped. They're like, whoa, hey. But it's helpful, like a book like that, for them to see the forest for the trees. It's more than just getting a like. There's these ads and things and all that is trying to maintain your attention. But Kirstin, thank you so much for coming on the show. We could go on and on and on, but I do try to keep my episodes relatively short because this is for the mom that's folding laundry or in a quick car ride to drop their kids somewhere. So I'm trying to keep it that. That's my intention. But thank you so much for being on the show. Listeners, I hope that you got some really good information and encouragement and just some understanding of what's going on out there. Feel free to send me any messages of questions or anything that you would like answered. And I can also steer them towards Kirstin if there's anything going on. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you, Kirstin.
Thanks. Bye.
Listeners, thanks for hanging out with me in the classroom today. If today's episode sparked a new idea for you, please make sure to click follow on your podcast app so you never miss a conversation. If you know a parent who is currently struggling to find answers, please share this episode with them. You just might be that link to help them on their journey. And finally, if you're a wellness expert or mom with a story to share, email me. I'd love to have you on the show. Until next time, keep them healthy.